This is CC Confidential, a selection of bonus clips from our podcast recording exclusively for conservative curious subscribers. In this episode, Michael talks about the pay-it-forward mentality of Silicon Valley. He also tells us why his Venice Beach bungalow has become a personal library, and reminisces about where he spent the most time when he was at Oxford. He even lets us take a peek into 1517 Fund's shadow portfolio. Oh, and did I forget to mention, he almost became a CIA agent.
I think that's the spirit of the Bay Area at its best. I found when I moved there in 2010 that there was always a pay-it-forward attitude about, helping people find work, bouncing ideas off them, refining ideas, making intros. I think it could be part of the tech economy, but whatever the reason is I think people are generally helpful. The presumption is, hey, how can I be helpful here and ask for nothing in return? Sometimes I'd see a stark difference in that attitude in other cities where they wanted to support tech startup ecosystems, and then you meet people in those places and the investors and people, they're always asking for something in return. It's always like, hey, if I make an intro to this person, what do I get out of it? It could be an investor. It's like, oh, I want some finder's fee, and that kind of spirit can really dampen down the amount or the pace of innovation, I think. So something that the Bay has right over the last 40, 50 years is developing that, and I think I just picked up on it. It's not unique to me, is all I'm saying. And then the other thing, maybe this was partly the reason I was excited to meet you was that there are very few conservatives or conservative-oriented people, or even people that's curious as the name of your organization is. And so I also wanted to support that and get to know you more. And I knew there were people that you might enjoy meeting that I knew who felt who fit a profile like that. I think a real freedom these days is the ability to speak your mind and maybe even speak the truth. I think that's one of the dangers of the world we live in now. And one of the goals for any aspiring intellectual, let's say, call it, or writer or anyone in the public sphere would be to, pardon my French, but I think you need fuck you money these days. You can say, fuck you to your business or live a life of leisure. It's more in the sense of, hey, I have the foundation now where I can speak truth to a mob, to power, to Twitter, whatever the case may be, because those voices are sorely lacking right now.
It's funny. It was like if you didn't have money, you could speak your mind, but now it's almost like you need to win Monopoly to say what you feel like, which is so bizarre. You would think free speech is something that everyone kind of has, but I guess definitely not on the West Coast. You were mentioning spending like $3,000 a year on books. Has that gone up?
Certainly in the last year, because I'm in the process of writing a book. And I wanted to do a lot of research. I always pick too many books for that reason. So I doubt I'll get through them all, but I'm not sure how much I've spent. It could be more like $4,000, I bet. I know through experience that I've found ideas that could be worth $100,000. And it's just, one paragraph in one book from 1935. And I find it, and then it serves me well. But the thing is, going in, I don't know which book that's going to be. So I have to be broad in my search. The other thing is that I don't like libraries because I often want to have the book, but I'm not sure when I'll need it. And when I sit down to write, I actually use my apartment is full of books everywhere. It's a mess. I'm kind of like a hoarder, and it's this constant fight to get through books and get them out. Back, I donate them after I don't need them. But when I'm writing, it's actually like being in a library. So I'll stop in the middle of something, and then I'll remember, okay, I need to check these sources, and I'll go and I'll pull the books off the shelf. I'll thumb through them. I'll find what I need, and then I put it back. So the old concept of a library is actually, I think, quite useful and valuable. And it's why I have a hard time writing on the road. I find I can't just pop into a coffee shop and sit myself down and just start going at it. I can get some ideas going that way, and it's good to build foundations and brainstorm that way. But I find when I'm actually in the flow of writing something serious, I need to have those references around.
Do you use those multicolored sticky tab or index cards?
I use yellow legal pad, Pilot G207, because it's the right thickness, has to be black.
Someone recently mentioned, how libraries are like secular churches.
Oxford is a collection of, they call smaller colleges, and each college has its own library. So I was at Corpus Christi, and one of the interesting pieces of history about Corpus is that its library is in an old chapel, and in that chapel is where the King James Bible was translated. I spent many many hours there, and I think the spirit of that lingered on even to this day. Let me add another piece here that people don't know about me personally. When I was in grad school, I was looking for things to do. And one of the things I happened to fall into was I applied for a role at the CIA as a political analyst. And that role is pretty much, at least as advertised on the website, is you're a researcher in Langley, Virginia, writing about geopolitical events and trends and trying to figure out what world leaders are doing. My grad school work was on moral political philosophy, but in the back of my head, I just thought, okay, maybe my background in research might help here. So I put that application in. Some months go by, and then they reached out to me, and I took a phone call, and they said, yeah, well, we saw this application for the role of political analyst, but would you be interested in the clandestine service instead? And I was like, well, let's see where this rabbit hole goes. So I said yes, and then I went through this job interview process with them, and it was fascinating. So I had to, in the middle round, I had to. They sent me a list of books. The books were about the failure of the CIA in the Middle East. So this is like 2007. Books critical of the CIA's work. I thought that was interesting. There were not spy novel on there, set in the Middle East. And then I had to write up essays. I had to take an IQ test. I had to take a personality test. One of my favorite questions on that is these personality tests are always like on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 agree, 1 disagree. And if they're testing for extroversion, this. It's like, hey, when I walk into a room, I feel, oh, that's full of other people at a party. I feel a lot of energy or I feel low energy. Obviously 5, you're extroverted, 1, you're not. But this test had questions I'd never seen before on the personality test. One was, while I'm walking down the street, I feel an aura of power around me. 5 agree, 1 disagree. And so what trait are they looking for here? Is it some grandiose sense of self-importance? Ever since then, I've thought a lot about and read up on espionage and how they source talent for the CIA. And one of the interesting tidbits I found was that you might think, imagine the whole James Bond thing. So the clandestine service is as close to James Bond as you're going to get. No one calls these people spies or agents. That's what amateurs call them. They're known as case officers. They often work abroad in embassies. And and so imagine, this seems very extroverted to me, as if this, imagine like the James Bond thing where you're at an embassy party and the target is some diplomat and you're chatting up with the ambassador and his wife. And then, this guy mentions that he loves skiing. You've never skied in your life, but now you got to pretend that you love skiing. And so you arrange a trip the following weekend, right? That whole thing feels extroverted to me. But what I learned in reading up on the CIA's search for talent is that they don't like extroverts because they're too good at getting chummy with people. They're so good at forming social ties that they don't understand other people and how they do it. And so what they do is the CIA targets what they call compensated introverts. These are people who have huge levels of ambition, but are hung up on some level of introversion. And so it's their ambition that pushes them through to get to know other people. And those are the people who pick up on, the gestures, the facial expressions, the emotional tone of a single passing remark. They're very good at reading those things because they've had to struggle with them in some sense. Oh, I also learned at the time that spies work in pairs. So there's the case officer who is very good at manipulating people. Because remember, these people, their job is to get a friend to commit treason. That, this person that they're trying to work with has to betray their country, their family, their employer into revealing some secret. And so to be good at getting someone to do that, you have to be very good at establishing rapport and trust rapidly. You have to know how to manipulate people. It's so funny as it's like I have collections of essays from the internal journal at the CIA, and they'll build a diagram of some, architecture of someone's vulnerabilities in order to know how to manipulate them. Like, does this guy have loose lips? Is he tired of his henpecking wife? Maybe he's upset he didn't get a promotion at work and now he hates his boss. It's like all these kinds of things become the grips to turn someone to commit treason. All right, so there's that type of person who's good at that. He works alongside, or he or she works alongside someone else who is more like an editor researcher. And this person is sort of collecting the puzzle pieces to think about the looming trends in the world and the region. So that they probably have some level of regional expertise. And so they're telling the manipulator person, like, okay, here's the information we need in order to find out about what's this larger thing emerging in the world. And so I take that model with what we do with 1517. We're not going to manipulate people. We can't do that. And so here's the thing is, like, Danielle's EQ is way, way higher than mine. She is just so good at building rapport, understanding the needs of other people, relating to them, that she's quite good at establishing that level of friendship. And then I think the division of labor is, I'm more like that other person who spends a lot of time researching the larger looming trends. When someone comes in to pitch us, we always insist we do things in twos, because Danielle's going to have that perspective and then I'm going to have mine. And then slowly but surely we get the puzzle pieces, and we don't even know what the box cover looks like. We don't know what the puzzle is. So it's like, okay, where do these fit? And we're trying to see how the startup fits in that world and the founders in it.
You had any instances or many instances where, you rejected somebody and then they...
In the first year, we rejected a guy out of Stanford who went on to create DoorDash. He wasn't working on DoorDash at the time, but I can't remember what. It was some kind of like social local thing he and his teammate were working on, and we passed, and he went on to found DoorDash. It wasn't, this has to do with applications and ease of entry into them. One of the things not a miss, but the Palmer Luckey apparently thought about applying and then got scared or didn't think about it. And he would have been, if he had applied, that would have been tremendous. So those are the types of misses that really hurt, because every investor will tell you this, is that it's not the ones you invest in that fail that cost you. It's the ones you didn't invest in that become successful. With 1517, we keep better track of our we call it a shadow portfolio. And then there are a few that we've passed on. I'd say my biggest miss is, let's see, there was this young man I met at the University of Waterloo. I was on, we do a lot of outbound recruiting in a sense. I would take office hours at the coffee shop. This young man came in. He was working on autonomous driving systems for golf carts, which, is kind of quirky. And he thought it would be useful to have these on corporate campuses or university campuses. And I wanted to follow him and his trajectory. So some months pass, then he comes out to the Bay and he tells me he's interviewing for YC. I'm like, okay, great. He gets in the Y Combinator. They actually keep running with this idea for autonomous golf carts for campuses. And then at the end of YC, they came in to pitch us. And there are a lot of things I don't like about Y Combinator. One of them is that they do a great job about getting people to, it's like they've got this halo effect where there's a lot of money that wants to get in the YC companies simply because they're YC companies, irrespective of what they're making or where they're at. And so these guys came in like that, and they're like, oh, we're raising this seed round or pre-seed round on I think it was like an $8-9 million value cap on a convertible note, meaning that's like a approximation of a valuation. And it's like, guys, you have no revenue. You're building golf carts. I can't. I think you're talented. Like, you've got all the right stuff in terms of your ability as founders and who you are, but this price is too high. And so we had to pass. I did recommend that he become a Teal Fellow because he had dropped out, and he did subsequently become one. But okay, fast forward a few years. A short history of the autonomous driving industry. The headlines you may recall is that this guy who works for Google quits. Aaron Lewandowski, he was part of their driverless team. And then he starts a driverless truck company. So they were making a perception system for trucks. And he makes a lot of progress there. He catches the eye of Travis Kalanick at Uber, and then Uber acquires Otto, this truck company, so that this guy can work on. He can become the head of Uber's autonomy team. Well, then all hell broke loose because it turned out he had stolen IP from Google, and that was the big court case. Okay, so what happened? This created a huge opportunity for the kid I met and worked with. They suddenly took their system, and instead of working on golf carts, they said, hey, now that no one's working on trucking, that's what we can do. And so they moved into that space, and they're doing quite well. They got money from Sequoia, and they're moving along. I think they're past Series B company now. So that's a miss for me. What went wrong there? Well, I got I went through the YC stuff, and the price seemed really, really high to me. And even though they had all the marks of being the types of founders we want to back, the price was too high. And so, I don't know. In any kind of decision making like this too, it's you can't totally judge your decision making based on the outcome, because you could have a good decision process, and then the world just doesn't go your way. Or nothing is 100%, nothing is certain. And so sometimes you can make good decisions and have bad outcomes, and you can make bad decisions and have good outcomes. Maybe you get lucky, right? And so the challenge is figuring out, like, when you do see the outcome, how does it feed back into your process to improve it, with the knowledge that, hey, maybe we made a good decision at the time, but the world cut a different way than we anticipated. And I sort of think that's what happened here. We didn't change our decision-making process too much on that, but we do keep track of these sorts of passes. I think it's important to do that, so a benchmark that you're operating on. It's so hard to improve on anything where the feedback cycle takes years like this. I think is difficult because you need that feedback. The quicker the feedback, the better you can improve. You know how to make changes quicker. But if you're making a decision on talent where, okay, you're backing someone, and then it's like 4 years later where you find out if it's success or failure, that's pretty slow. Field, maybe a way of breaking it down is, if you think about, I don't know, pick your topic in science, even the arts, painting, is like there are a number of concepts that are baked into the traditions of any artistic field. And if you as an artist are starting out in your career, you're going to take some sampling of those concepts and probably blend them. Just imagine you're pulling them out of a bag, and then your creativity is going to come from the extent that you're able to grab from other bags and maybe mix it with that stock of things. And maybe you invent your own, but there's always going to be that base level of ideas that you're working with.